The night Elena Ward almost died, she was wearing a borrowed dress and drinking stolen champagne. She didn't know the man watching her from across the ballroom would change everything. Didn't know his name carried more weight than money. It carried blood. Didn't know that one dance would pull her into a world where power wasn't negotiated, it was taken. Where love could get you killed. This is that story. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. The Fairmont Hotel ballroom glittered like something out of a fever dream. All crystal chandeliers and marble floors so polished, Elena could see her nervous reflection staring back up at her. She stood near the bar, gripping a champagne flute she'd snagged from a passing waiter, trying to look like she belonged among Boston's elite instead of what she actually was. A struggling writer who'd borrowed this midnight blue dress from her roommate and still had student loan debt that kept her up at night. You look like you're about to bolt. Elena turned. The woman beside her was older, maybe 50, wearing diamonds that probably cost more than Elena's entire apartment building. Her smile was kind, though, which felt rare in a room like this. That obvious? Elena asked. Only to someone who remembers her first one of these. The woman extended her hand. Margaret Chen, and you are? Elena Ward. I'm here with, well, my editor thought I should network. She didn't mention that networking meant her editor had given her a +1 ticket she couldn't use and told Elena to absorb the atmosphere for the contemporary romance novel she was supposedly writing, the one that was currently sitting at chapter 3 with a blinking cursor that mocked her every morning. Smart editor. Margaret's eyes scanned the room. Though I'll warn you, half the people here would sell their grandmother for a tax write-off, and the other half already have. Elena laughed, then tried to cover it with a cough when several heads turned. Don't worry about them, Margaret said. They're too busy performing for each other to notice us. See that man over there? She tilted her head toward a silver-haired politician Elena recognized from campaign ads. His wife is sleeping with his chief of staff. That woman in the red dress? She's 3 months from bankruptcy but wearing borrowed Cartier. And that gentleman by the window runs half the commercial real estate in New England, but tells people he's in property development because it sounds cleaner. How do you know all this? Sweetheart, I've been coming to these things for 30 years. You learn to read the room. Margaret paused, then her expression shifted. Subtle, but Elena caught it. Though there's one person here I still can't quite figure out. Who? Don't look now, but there's a man at 3 o'clock who's been watching you for the past 5 minutes. Elena's stomach flipped. Watching me? Are you sure? Positive. And trust me, Luca Moretti doesn't watch anyone without a reason. The name meant nothing to Elena, but the way Margaret said it, careful, respectful, maybe a little afraid, made her spine straighten. Should I be worried? I don't know what, Margaret said honestly, but I'm going to give you the same advice I'd give my daughter. If he approaches you, be polite. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. And whatever you do, don't mistake his manners for softness. Before Elena could respond, Margaret had melted into the crowd, leaving her alone with her champagne and a sudden awareness of the weight of someone's attention. She turned slowly, trying to be casual about it. And there he was. He stood across the ballroom, half shadowed by one of the marble columns. And the first thing Elena thought was that he didn't belong here either, but for completely different reasons. While everyone else was performing wealth, he simply existed in it. Dark suit that probably cost more than her car, if she had a car. Black hair pushed back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled intensity. He wasn't the most handsome man in the room, but he was the most present, if that made sense. Like he occupied space differently than everyone else. Their eyes met. Elena forgot to breathe. He didn't smile, didn't look away, just watched her with an expression that was neither friendly nor hostile, just aware, calculated, curious in a way that made her feel like a puzzle he'd decided might be worth solving. Someone moved between them, breaking the eye contact, and Elena sucked in air like she'd been underwater. Jesus, she muttered, downing the rest of her champagne in one go. You met him. Elena jumped. A young guy around her age had materialized beside her. Blonde, expensive suit, easy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I didn't meet anyone, Elena said, but you saw him, Luca. That's basically the same thing at one of these parties. He extended his hand. Trevor Ashford. My father's the one giving the speech later about investing in Boston's future while his company ships jobs overseas. His candor surprised her into shaking his hand. Elena Ward. Writer, right? I heard you talking to Margaret. That's cool. What do you write? Fiction, romance mostly, or I'm trying to. She didn't know why she was being honest with this stranger. Maybe because he seemed only marginally more comfortable here than she was. Romance. So love stories, happy endings. Trevor's smile turned a little sad. Must be nice, making those up. You don't believe in happy endings? I believe in contracts, prenups, and mutually beneficial arrangements. Love is... He stopped, his attention caught by something across the room. His expression shifted. Shit, he's moving. What? Luca, Elena, he's coming this way. And he was. The crowd seemed to part without anyone consciously moving, like water around a stone. Luca Moretti walked with the kind of quiet confidence that didn't need announcement. People noticed. Conversations paused. Elena watched a city councilman physically step back as Luca passed, watched a society woman touch her husband's arm in warning. Trevor had already vanished. Then Luca was standing in front of her, and Elena realized three things simultaneously. 1, he was taller than she'd thought. 2, his eyes were dark gray, not brown. And 3, she'd somehow forgotten how to speak English. Elena Ward. His voice was quiet, controlled, with just a trace of an accent she couldn't place. You're the writer. It wasn't a question. How do you know my name? I asked someone. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. You've been standing here for 40 minutes, nursing the same glass, looking like you'd rather be anywhere else. I find that interesting. Why? Because everyone else in this room is pretending. You're not. Elena felt her defenses rise. You don't know anything about me. No, he agreed. But I'd like to. The directness of it stunned her. No smooth pickup line, no artificial charm, just a simple statement delivered like a business proposition. Why? She asked again. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Because you're the first person tonight who's asked me that question instead of just saying yes. Maybe you're used to people who want something from you. Everyone wants something from me, Elena. He said her name like he was testing how it sounded. The question is what you want. I don't want anything. I don't even know who you are. That definitely was amusement now. You're a bad liar. Excuse me? You know exactly who I am. Someone warned you. Probably Margaret Chen. She has good instincts about people. And now you're trying to decide if I'm dangerous or just interesting. Elena's heart was hammering. Can't you be both? Usually. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Can you do that? She should walk away. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to thank him politely and disappear into the crowd. But there was something in the way he was looking at her, not like she was prey, but like she was something unexpected and therefore valuable. That kept her rooted in place. Depends on the question. Are you afraid of me right now? Elena considered lying, considered playing it safe. Then she remembered what Margaret had said about not mistaking his manners for softness, and decided that if this man valued honesty, she'd give it to him. A little, but I'm more curious than afraid, which is probably stupid. He smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Made him look younger, more human, dangerous in a completely different way. Not stupid, brave. He extended his hand. Dance with me. That's not a question. No, it's not. The orchestra was playing something slow and classical. Couples drifted across the floor in practice movements, maintaining careful distances, performing intimacy without actually touching beyond what was proper. Elena looked at his outstretched hand, looked at his face, thought about her tiny apartment, her unfinished novel, her safe, small, predictable life. One dance, she said, taking his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain, and he led her onto the floor. The moment his arm settled around her waist, Elena knew she'd made a mistake. Not because it felt wrong, because it felt too right. He held her like she was something valuable, moved with a kind of controlled grace that made the dance feel intimate despite the formal distance between them. You're tense, he said quietly. I don't really dance. You're doing fine. Follow my lead. Is that what everyone does around you? Follow your lead? His eyes met hers. Most people do it because they're afraid not to. I'd prefer you do it because you want to. And if I don't want to, then don't. His hand shifted slightly at her waist, pulling her a fraction closer. But I think you do. I think you're tired of playing it safe. I think you came here tonight hoping something would happen, even if you didn't know what. You think you know me based on 40 minutes of watching me stand by a bar? I think I recognize something in you that's in me. The feeling of being in a room full of people and still being completely alone. The honesty of it caught her off guard. For a moment, his careful control slipped, and she saw something underneath, something raw and tired and human. Why are you here tonight? She asked. If you hate these things as much as I do, business, obligations, the performance of respectability. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. My world requires appearances. What world is that? One you don't want to be part of. You don't get to decide that. Elena. He stopped moving, right there in the middle of the dance floor, and the way he said her name carried a weight that made her breath catch. People have written entire warning labels about me. Margaret Chen told you to be careful. Trevor Ashford ran away the moment I approached. You're smart enough to know what that means. So why did you ask me to dance? Because I'm selfish. Because I saw something real in a room full of carefully constructed lies, and I wanted to touch it, just for a moment. Because... He stopped, something flickering across his face. Then, quieter. Because you looked at me like I was just a man, not a reputation. The orchestra swelled into the final bars of the song. Around them, couples began to separate, applauding politely. Luca didn't let go. I need to tell you something, he said, and then you can decide if you want to walk away. Okay? I'm not a good man, Elena. I've built an empire on things that would horrify you. I've made choices that keep me up at night. The people who fear me have good reason to. And if you stay, if you let me buy you dinner, if you give me your phone number, if you let this go any further than one dance, you're stepping into something you can't take back. His hand was still on her waist. His eyes were still on hers. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to have a choice. Because everyone who enters my world does it blind. And I'm tired of that. Because... He paused, and for the first time he looked uncertain. Because I think you might actually matter, and I don't want to ruin you by accident. The ballroom felt very quiet suddenly, despite the murmur of conversation around them. Elena should walk away. She knew this. She was a writer living paycheck to paycheck, barely keeping her head above water with a novel she couldn't finish and a future that looked suspiciously like failure. She had no business getting involved with a man who spoke about his life like it was a minefield, who was watched and feared and powerful in ways she didn't understand. But when was the last time anyone had looked at her like she mattered? When had she felt this alive? Ask me, she said. What? You said you wanted to buy me dinner. Ask me properly. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, pleasure, something almost like relief. Elena Ward, will you have dinner with me? When? Tomorrow night. I'll send a car. I'd prefer to meet you somewhere. I don't know you well enough for cars yet. That almost smile again. Fair enough. Do you know Contessa? She didn't, but she nodded anyway. She could Google it. 8 o'clock? Okay, he repeated, and there was something in his voice that made it sound like they'd just agreed to something much bigger than dinner. He stepped back, letting her go, and the sudden absence of his touch felt like cold water. I should warn you, Elena said, surprising herself. I'm probably going to Google you tonight, and whatever I find might change my mind about dinner. I know. That's why I'm telling you now. Whatever you read, it's probably true. All of it. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card, plain black, his name in silver, no title or company, just a phone number. If you decide not to come, text me. I won't be offended. Elena took the card. Their fingers brushed. And if I do come, then we'll figure out what happens next. He walked away without another word, disappearing into the crowd with the same quiet inevitability he'd arrived with. Elena stood there, card in hand, heart racing, while the orchestra started a new song and the world continued around her like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She could feel it. Cha. At 2 in the morning, Elena sat cross-legged on her bed, laptop open, falling down a rabbit hole that got darker with every click. Luca Moretti, age 34. Net worth estimated between $800 million and $1.2 billion. Holdings in commercial real estate, shipping, private security, hospitality. That was the sanitized version. The deeper she dug, the more uncomfortable it got. Rumors of connections to organized crime families in Boston and Providence. A Wikipedia page that had been edited 17 times, each version scrubbing out allegations before they could stick. News articles about business rivals who'd mysteriously withdrawn from deals after meeting with him. A Boston Herald piece from 3 years ago with the headline, "The Quiet King, How Luca Moretti Built an Empire in the Shadows." She found a photo of him at a charity gala, flanked by a mayor and a police commissioner, all three smiling for the camera. The caption mentioned a $2 million donation to a children's hospital. Blood money, she wondered? Or genuine generosity from a complicated man? There were other photos. Luca at a waterfront property development. Luca leaving a courthouse, charges dismissed. Luca at a funeral, face expressionless, while men in expensive suits stood at respectful distances like soldiers at attention. Her roommate, Sophie, wandered in around 3 with a bag of takeout. "You're still up? How was the fancy party?" "Weird. Intense. I met someone." Sophie flopped onto the bed, immediately interested. Good weird or serial killer weird? I don't know yet. Elena turned the laptop around, showing Luca's photo. Sophie whistled low. "Holy shit, Elena, that's Luca Moretti. You know him?" "Everyone knows of him. My ex worked construction, and his crew did a project on one of Moretti's properties. He said the guy pays 3 times what everyone else does, expects perfection, and has a reputation for taking care of his people, but also for burying anyone who crosses him. There are stories." "What kind of stories?" "The kind people tell in whispers and never repeat twice." Sophie studied Elena's face. "Why? Did he hit on you?" "He asked me to dinner." "Jesus Christ." Sophie sat up straighter. "Elena, you can't be serious." "I don't know if I am." "What did he say to you?" Elena thought about how Luca had looked at her, how he'd warned her, how he'd given her the truth and then let her choose. "He told me he was dangerous, that I should walk away." "So walk away." "What if I don't want to?" Sophie grabbed Elena's shoulders. "Listen to me. I love you, but you're a romance writer who cries during Pixar movies and can't kill spiders. That man is in a completely different universe. You're going to get hurt. Maybe. But maybe I'm tired of being safe." Elena heard herself say it and realized it was true. "I've spent my whole life being careful. Good grades, safe choices, responsible decisions. And where has it gotten me? I'm 28, broke, and my biggest accomplishment this month was not getting evicted. When was the last time I felt anything real? Danger isn't the same as real." "I know. But he looked at me like..." Elena stopped, trying to find the words. "Like he saw me. Actually saw me. Not the broke writer or the scholarship kid or the girl who doesn't belong, just me. And it's been so long since anyone has looked at me like that." Sophie sighed, pulling Elena into a hug. "If you do this, if you actually go to dinner, promise me you'll be smart. Meet in public. Tell me where you are. Keep your phone on." "I promise." "And Elena, if your gut tells you something's wrong, listen to it. Forget how he makes you feel. Forget the romance novel fantasy. Trust your instincts." Elena nodded against Sophie's shoulder, but part of her knew her instincts were already compromised, because every rational thought said run, but something deeper, something hungry for more than her small, safe life, was already saying stay. The next evening, Elena stood outside Contessa at 7:55, wearing the one good dress she actually owned and boots that were comfortable enough to run in if necessary. Sophie's warnings echoed in her head, mixing with her own doubts and the dangerous current of excitement that had been humming through her all day. She'd told herself she'd only stay for one drink. She'd told Sophie the same thing, texted her the address, promised to check in every hour. Now she stood on the sidewalk, watching beautiful people flow in and out of the restaurant's glass doors, and wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or finally doing something brave. Her phone buzzed. Unknown. Number, You came. She looked up. Through the window, she could see Luca sitting at a corner table, phone in hand, watching her with an expression that was equal parts pleased and surprised. Elena, I'm considering it. Unknown number. Fair enough? Take your time. I'll be here. There was something about that, the patience, the lack of pressure, that made her decision. Elena pushed through the doors. The restaurant was all exposed brick and candlelight, intimate without being pretentious. A hostess approached, but before she could speak, Luca stood from his table, and Elena found herself moving toward him like gravity had shifted in his direction. You came, he said again, this time out loud. You sound surprised. I am. After what you Googled last night, I expected a text saying you changed your mind. How do you know I Googled you? Because you're smart. And because you're here anyway, which means either you're reckless or you decided the truth was less scary than the rumors. He pulled out her chair. Which is it? Elena sat, letting him push the chair in, an old-fashioned gesture that shouldn't have affected her but did. I haven't decided yet. Then I have all night to convince you. A waiter appeared with water and menus, but Luca waved the menus away. Trust me? He asked Elena. She should say no. Should insist on ordering for herself, maintaining control, keeping boundaries. Okay? He ordered in rapid Italian, she caught maybe every third word, and the waiter nodded like he'd just received instructions for brain surgery before disappearing. You speak Italian? My father was from Naples. My mother was Irish-American, Boston-born. I grew up between both worlds. His expression flickered. Neither one really wanted me. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me to be useful to both. That's where power comes from, being the bridge people need. Is that how you see yourself, as a bridge? I see myself as whatever I need to be. He leaned back slightly, studying her. But I didn't ask you here to talk about me. Tell me about your writing. There's not much to tell. I have a novel that isn't working, an editor who's losing patience, and a day job that barely covers rent. What's the novel about? Love. Second chances? Two people who shouldn't work but do. Art imitating life? Elena felt her cheeks heat. It's fiction. The best fiction is just truth wearing a better dress. He paused as the waiter returned with wine. What's stopping you from finishing it? I don't know. I know what's supposed to happen. How they meet, how they fall in love, how they overcome their obstacles, but every time I try to write it, it feels fake. Like I'm painting by numbers instead of creating something real. Maybe you don't believe in it. In what? The happy ending, the idea that love can overcome everything. Maybe you're too honest to write the lie. It hit harder than it should have, probably because he was right. So what do I do? Write the truth instead. Stop trying to give people what they expect and give them what's real, even if it's messy and complicated and doesn't tie up neatly. That's not very romantic. No, he agreed, but it's honest. And honestly is more romantic than any lie, no matter how pretty. The food arrived. Courses Elena couldn't identify, but that tasted like someone had somehow made the concept of comfort into a meal. They talked while they ate, the conversation flowing easier than it should between two strangers from different worlds. He asked about her childhood. She told him about growing up in a small town in Maine, about a mother who'd worked 2 jobs to send her to college, about the guilt of wanting more than what home could offer. She asked about his business. He gave her the sanitized version, but underneath the corporate speak, she could hear the truth. The careful alliances, the calculated risks, the constant balance between power and survival. Do you ever want to stop? She asked. Stop what? All of it. The empire building, the power games, the performance. Do you ever just want to walk away? He was quiet for a long moment, turning his wine glass in slow circles. Every day, he finally said. But I'm too far in now. Too many people depend on me. Too many enemies would see it as weakness. In my world, you don't retire. You either die or you're destroyed. Those are the only exits. That sounds lonely. It is. He looked up at her. That's why you surprised me last night. You have no agenda. You're not trying to get close to me for access or power or money. You're just here being honest. Do you know how rare that is? Maybe your world is just full of the wrong people. It is, and I'm one of them. I don't think so. Elena. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers, barely a touch, but it sent electricity up her arm. Don't make me into something I'm not. I've done things that would disgust you. I've hurt people. I've made choices that can't be undone. You're looking at me like I'm the hero of your novel, but I'm not. I'm the antagonist, the warning, the bad ending. What if I don't believe in simple categories? What if people are just complicated and messy and trying their best? Then you're naive. Or maybe you've spent so long being what your world needs that you've forgotten you're allowed to be human. His hand tightened on hers, just for a second, almost reflexive, before he pulled back. You should finish your wine, he said, his voice rougher than before. And then I'm going to ask you something, and you're going to say no. What? I'm going to ask if you want to see where I live, where I actually live, not the places I keep for appearances. And you're going to say no because you're smart and careful, and you've already taken enough risks tonight. Elena's heart hammered. What if I say yes? Then I'm going to try very hard to be the kind of man who deserves that trust. And we both know I'm probably going to fail. She should say no. Sophie would kill her. Every self-preservation instinct she had was screaming at her to thank him for dinner and call an Uber and go home to her safe, small, predictable life. Show me, she said. His eyes went dark. Elena, you keep warning me away. You keep telling me to run. But you asked me here. You held my hand. You're looking at me right now like... She stopped, suddenly brave or stupid or both. Like I matter, so show me. Show me who you really are, and I'll decide for myself. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he stood, dropped cash on the table, way too much cash, and extended his hand. Last chance to change your mind. Elena took his hand. They walked out into the Boston night together, and somewhere in the back of her mind, Elena heard Sophie's voice telling her she was an idiot, heard her own common sense screaming warnings, heard the sensible part of her that had kept her safe and small and alone for so long begging her to stop. She ignored all of it. Because Luca Moretti was dangerous and complicated and probably going to break her heart, but he was also the first person in years who'd made her feel like she was more than just surviving. And maybe that was worth the risk. Maybe that was worth everything. Luca's car was waiting at the curb, a black sedan with tinted windows and a driver who appeared the moment they stepped outside. The man was built like he'd been carved from concrete, his eyes scanning the street in constant assessment before he opened the rear door. Marco, Luca said by way of introduction. He's been with me for 8 years. Marco nodded once at Elena, his expression unreadable, before closing them into the back seat. The interior smelled like leather and something else. Cologne, maybe, or just the scent of money. Elena's apartment probably could have fit in this car twice over. You're quiet, Luca said as they pulled into traffic. I'm thinking. About? Whether I'm brave or just stupid. Can it be both? There was amusement in his voice, but also something else. Concern, maybe. You can still change your mind. I can have Marco take you home. Elena looked at him. Really looked. In the dim light filtering through the windows, he seemed tired. The careful control from the restaurant had slipped just slightly, revealing the exhaustion underneath. Do you want me to change my mind? I want you to do whatever keeps you safe, even if that means walking away from me. That's not an answer. He turned to face her fully. No, Elena, I don't want you to change your mind. I want to show you my home and pour you wine and talk to you until sunrise. I want to be selfish, but I also know that wanting something doesn't make it right. What if I want the same thing? Then we're both being selfish. The car wound through Boston's streets, leaving the restaurant district behind. They crossed the harbor, the city lights reflecting off black water, and Elena realized they were heading toward the North End. Old money territory, buildings that had been standing since before the Revolution. They pulled up to a converted warehouse, red brick, original windows, the kind of property developers salivated over. Marco opened the door, and Luca led her to a private entrance, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. The elevator was old, the kind with an iron gate that folded closed. Luca pulled it shut and pressed the only button, unmarked. You own the whole building, Elena said. Yes, that's excessive, paranoid. Both. He shrugged. But private. No neighbors, no shared walls, no one asking questions. The elevator opened directly into his apartment. Not a hallway, not a lobby, just straight into a massive open space that took Elena's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor. Exposed brick and original wood beams mixed with modern furniture that looked more comfortable than stylish. Books everywhere, shelves lining the walls, stacked on tables, piled on the floor beside a worn leather chair. A kitchen that was clearly used, not just for show. Art that looked original and expensive but chosen for love, not investment. It was beautiful. And it was lived in, real. "This isn't what I expected," Elena said. "What did you expect? Black marble and animal heads on the walls? Maybe something colder, more villainous?" "I was going to say impersonal." Luca shrugged off his jacket, tossing it over a chair, and for the first time Elena saw him without the armor of a suit. Just a man in shirt sleeves, looking suddenly younger and more vulnerable. "This is the only place I don't perform," he said quietly. "Everything else is theater. But here, this is mine." He moved to the kitchen, pulling out wine glasses. "Red or white?" "Red." While he poured, Elena wandered to the bookshelves. Philosophy, history, poetry in 3 languages. First editions mixed with dog-eared paperbacks. She pulled out a worn copy of Dante's Inferno, the margins filled with notes in small, precise handwriting. "You read this in Italian?" "My father made me memorize sections as a child. Said it was important to understand hell before you tried to escape it." Luca appeared beside her with wine. "I think he meant it as a warning. I took it as a roadmap." "That's dark." "My father was a dark man." He touched the book gently, like it was something precious. "He died when I was 19, left me with debts I couldn't pay and enemies I couldn't fight. I had 2 choices, disappear or become someone they couldn't touch. So you built an empire." "I built a fortress. There's a difference." He handed her the wine. "Come here. I want to show you something." He led her to the windows overlooking the harbor. The city sprawled before them, lights reflecting off water, 1,000 lives playing out in illuminated windows. "See that building?" He pointed to a high-rise in the financial district. "I own the top 3 floors. That warehouse by the waterfront? Mine. The hotel where we met last night? I have a 20% stake." His finger traced the skyline. "I own or control half of what you're looking at. And you know what the joke is?" "What?" "None of it makes me happy. It makes me powerful. It makes me secure. But happy?" He took a long drink of wine. "I haven't been happy since before my father died. And I was too young then to appreciate it." Elena set her glass down on the window ledge. "Then why keep building?" "Because stopping means dying. In my world, you're either expanding or you're being consumed. There's no middle ground." "That sounds exhausting." "It is. So take a break. Walk away for a month, a week, a day. Let someone else handle things." He laughed, but it was bitter. "I did that once. 3 years ago, I went to Italy for 2 weeks. Thought I could disconnect, pretend to be normal. When I got back, someone had tried to move on one of my properties. My second-in-command had made deals without authorization, and I'd lost a contract worth $40 million. He turned to look at her. "That's what happens when I relax. Everything falls apart. Or maybe you've surrounded yourself with the wrong people. Maybe. But they're the people I have. And I've learned not to trust anyone completely. It's safer that way." "Is that why you're alone?" The question hung between them, too personal, too direct. Elena half expected him to shut down, to retreat behind his careful control. Instead, he said, "Yes. And because anyone who gets close to me becomes a target, a liability, something my enemies can use against me." "Like me? Especially like you." He stepped closer, his hand coming up to brush her cheek, gentle, tentative, like he was touching something fragile. "You're not built for my world, Elena. You're too honest, too open. You'd be eaten alive in a week." "You don't know that." "I do. I've seen it happen. Good people, honest people, they come into this life thinking love or loyalty will protect them. It doesn't. It just gives your enemies more ways to hurt you." "Then why did you bring me here?" "Because I'm selfish. Because I'm tired. Because for one night, I wanted to pretend I could have something normal." His thumb traced her jawline. "Because you make me want to be someone better, and that's dangerous for both of us." Elena's heart was hammering so hard she could hear it. "What if I'm not afraid?" "You should be." But I'm not. He stared at her for a long moment, something warring in his expression. Then he stepped back, breaking contact, and Elena felt the loss of his touch like cold water. I need to tell you something, he said, and you're going to leave after you hear it. Luca, just listen, please. He moved to the kitchen, refilling his wine glass with hands that weren't quite steady. My father was a loan shark, small time but violent. When he died, his debts became mine. $50,000 to people who didn't care that I was 19 and working construction. They wanted their money, and when I couldn't pay, they gave me a choice: work for them or die. Elena stayed by the window, silent, listening. So I worked, started as muscle, collecting debts my father couldn't. I was good at it, too good. Within a year, I was handling larger accounts. Within 3, I was running operations. By 25, I'd bought out my father's debts and started building something of my own. That's not who you are now, Elena said quietly. Isn't it? I'm legitimate now, mostly. I pay taxes, donate to charity, smile for cameras. But the foundation was built on broken bones and fear. Every property I own, every business I control, somewhere in its history is violence. Threats. People who said no and then mysteriously changed their minds. Have you ever killed anyone? The directness of her question seemed to surprise him. He set down his glass. Yes. The word hung in the air between them, simple and terrible. How many? Does the number matter? I don't know, maybe. He was quiet for a long time, staring out at the city. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless, which somehow made it worse. 3, directly. And I've ordered things, made decisions that probably resulted in more deaths. I don't know exact numbers. I don't want to know. Elena's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the window to steady them. Tell me why. The first was self-defense. A rival who came at me with a knife in an alley. Him or me. I chose me. He swallowed. The second was a man who hurt a 15-year-old girl who worked in one of my restaurants. Police wouldn't touch him. He had connections, family money. So I handled it. And the third? The third was someone who betrayed me. Sold information that got 2 of my people killed. I made an example. Jesus, Luca. Now you know. He turned to face her. Now you understand why everyone's afraid. Why Margaret warned you. Why Trevor ran. This is what I am, Elena. Not the man who bought you dinner or quoted poetry. This, the violence and the blood and the choices that can't be taken back. Elena's mind was spinning. She should leave, should call Sophie, get an Uber, run as fast as she could back to her normal, safe, uncomplicated life. But she thought about the exhaustion in his face, the careful control that was really just armor, the books with notes in the margins and the confession that he hadn't been happy in 15 years. You're telling me this because you want me to leave, she said slowly. Yes. Because you think if I know the worst of you, I'll run. Yes. Because you're afraid. That made him flinch. I'm not afraid. Yes, you are. You're terrified that if you let someone in, they'll either use it against you or you'll hurt them. So you warn them away first. You control the ending before it can surprise you. Elena moved toward him, her legs unsteady but her decision made. But I'm not running, Luca. Elena, I'm not saying I'm okay with violence. I'm not saying I understand your world or that I don't have 1,000 questions. But I'm also not running. Because you told me the truth. You didn't have to. You could have lied, could have kept the darkness hidden until I was in too deep to leave. But you didn't, and that matters. You're not thinking clearly. Maybe not. Or maybe I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. She was standing right in front of him now, close enough to see the storm in his eyes. You asked me at dinner if I believed in happy endings. I said I didn't know. But I know this. I believe in honesty. I believe in people trying to be better than they were. And I believe you're more than the worst things you've done. You don't know that. No, but I'd like to find out. He stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. Like the concept of someone staying after hearing the truth was so alien, he couldn't process it. Why? The word came out rough, almost broken. Because you make me feel alive. Because you're honest about your damage instead of hiding it. Because... She took a breath. Because I'm tired of living small, and you're the first person who's made me want more, even if that more is complicated and messy and probably a mistake. It is a mistake. Then I'll make it with my eyes open. Something in him cracked then. She saw it happen, watched the careful control fracture. He reached for her, his hand sliding into her hair, tilting her face up to his. "If I kiss you," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "there's no going back. You become mine, and everyone who wants to hurt me will know it. You'll be a target, a weakness. They'll come for you to get to me. Then I guess you'll have to protect me." "Elena," she kissed him. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate and hungry, like they were both drowning and each other was air. His arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him, and Elena felt the careful control he'd maintained all evening finally shatter completely. He kissed her like a man starving, like he'd been holding back for so long he'd forgotten how to do anything else. His hand tightened in her hair, his other arm locked around her waist, and Elena forgot to breathe, forgot to think, forgot everything except the feeling of his mouth on hers and the way he was holding her like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "You're going to regret this," he said against her mouth. "Probably. I'm going to hurt you, not intentionally, but it'll happen. I'll choose my empire over you, or my past will catch up, or you'll realize the man you thought I could be doesn't actually exist. Maybe. Or maybe you'll surprise both of us." He laughed, actually laughed, surprised and raw and real. Then he kissed her again, slower this time, like he was memorizing the moment. "Stay," he said when they broke apart. "Not for... just stay. Let me make you coffee in the morning and bore you with the newspaper. Let me have one normal night before reality comes back." "Okay." "Okay?" "I'll stay." Something in his expression shifted. Relief, wonder, fear. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together, and led her to the couch. They sat, her curled against his side, his arm around her shoulders, and it felt easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. "Tell me about Maine," he said, "about growing up." So she did. She told him about lobster boats and pine forests, about a mother who'd worked herself to exhaustion to give Elena chances she'd never had, about leaving home at 18 with a full scholarship and guilt that still kept her up at night. He listened like every word mattered, his hand playing absently with her hair, occasionally asking questions that showed he was really hearing her. "Do you go back?" he asked. "Not often. My mom died 3 years ago, cancer. After that, there wasn't much reason to return." "I'm sorry." "Me too. She never got to see me succeed. She worked so hard to give me opportunities, and all I've done is struggle with a novel that won't cooperate and a bank account that's perpetually empty." "She saw you trying. That probably mattered more than success." "Did your father see you build your empire?" "No. He died thinking I'd end up dead in an alley within a year. Maybe he was right. Maybe this," he gestured at the apartment, the city beyond, "is just a slower death." "Don't say that." "It's true, though. I've built something impressive, but what's it for? I have no family, few real friends, and I'm so paranoid I sweep this apartment for bugs twice a week. I'm 34 years old, and I can't remember the last time I slept through the night without dreaming about the people I've failed or hurt." Elena shifted, turning to look at him directly. "Then change. Stop building the empire and start building something else. A life. Connections. Things that matter more than money or power." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because I can't just walk away. There are people who depend on my protection. Employees, families, entire businesses that exist because of decisions I've made. If I stop, if I show weakness, everything collapses. Or maybe you're so used to being the one holding everything together that you've convinced yourself it's all you're good for." He stared at her. "That's true? I know. I do the same thing. I tell myself I have to finish this novel, have to succeed, have to prove my mother's sacrifice was worth it. And every day I don't. I feel like I'm failing. But maybe we're both just afraid of finding out what happens if we stop trying to be what we think we should be and just exist. Be human, be flawed, be enough as we are." "When did you become so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm terrified and making this up as I go." "That makes two of us." They talked until the sky started to lighten, about everything and nothing. He told her about learning to box as a kid, about a teacher who'd believed he was smart when everyone else wrote him off, about loving architecture and sometimes walking the city at night just to look at buildings. She told him about wanting to write since she was 8, about the romance novels she'd hidden under her bed because the other kids thought they were stupid, about the terror of putting words on paper and having them not be good enough. "Read me something," he said as dawn broke over the harbor. "What?" "Your novel, the one that isn't working. Read me a section." "It's terrible." "I don't care." So Elena pulled up the manuscript on her phone, scrolling to a passage she'd written and rewritten a dozen times, and read it aloud, her voice shaky at first, then stronger. It was about two people at a crossroads trying to decide if the risk of loving each other was worth the guaranteed pain of loss. The writing was rough, unpolished, but there was something raw in it that she'd been too afraid to let show before. When she finished, Luca was quiet for a long time. "That's not terrible," he finally said. "That's honest. That's exactly what you said you couldn't write, something real. It doesn't have a happy ending. Maybe not, but it has an honest one. And maybe that's better." Elena looked at him, at the exhaustion in his face, the vulnerability he'd let show, the man underneath the reputation. And she thought maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something honest too. Something that wouldn't be easy or simple or safe, but would be real. "I should probably go home," she said, though she didn't move. "Sophie's probably filing a missing person report." "Probably." He still had his arm around her. "Or you could stay for coffee. Let me prove I can make a decent breakfast." "Can you?" "Absolutely not. But I'm willing to try." She laughed, and he smiled, really smiled, unguarded and genuine. "Coffee sounds good." They moved to the kitchen, and Elena watched him attempt to work an espresso machine that was clearly more expensive than her laptop and just as complicated. He swore in Italian when it sputtered, and she couldn't stop laughing. "Stop judging me," he said, but he was smiling. "I'm not judging. I'm appreciating the fact that you can apparently control half of Boston but can't figure out a coffee maker. It's a character flaw. It's humanizing." He finally managed to produce 2 cups of something resembling coffee and scrambled eggs that were only slightly burned. They ate at his kitchen counter as the city woke up below them, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty, exactly, but possibility. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know. I've never done this before." "Done what?" "Been honest with someone. Let them see the real me and had them stay." "Is that what you want? For me to stay?" He set down his fork, his expression serious. "Yes, but I also want you to understand what that means. My life is complicated and dangerous. There will be things I can't tell you, places you can't go, people I have to deal with that you should never meet. I'll try to protect you, but there are no guarantees. I'm not asking for guarantees. I'm asking if you want me in your life, messy and complicated as it is." "I want you in my life," he said quietly. "I want to take you to dinner and argue about books and watch you write. I want to know what you look like first thing in the morning and what makes you laugh. I want—" He stopped, something flickering across his face. "I want normal things, things I convinced myself I couldn't have." "Then let's try for normal. Or whatever version of normal we can manage. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is." He reached across the counter, taking her hand. "I'm going to disappoint you. At some point, I'll choose business over dinner, or I'll shut down when you need me to open up, or my past will show up and you'll realize exactly what you've gotten yourself into. And I'll probably push too hard, or get overwhelmed by your world, or write you into my novel without permission." She squeezed his hand. "We're both going to mess this up, but maybe we can mess it up together." "Together," he repeated like he was testing the word. Then, softer. "I like the sound of that." They finished breakfast as the sun climbed higher, and Elena texted Sophie that she was alive and would explain everything later. Sophie sent back a string of question marks and threats of bodily harm if Elena had done anything stupid. "I should probably actually go home now," Elena said reluctantly. "Face the music. Convince my roommate I haven't lost my mind." "Have you?" "Maybe. Probably. I went home with a man I met yesterday who just told me he's killed people. So yeah, I think my judgment is questionable right now. I can have Marco drive you. I'd rather take the train. Normal, remember? At least let me walk you out." They rode the elevator down together, his hand still holding hers. On the street, morning traffic was picking up, the city fully awake now. Elena felt like she was stepping out of a dream and back into reality. When can I see you again? Luca asked. When do you want to see me? Today. Tomorrow. Every day. He caught himself, looking almost embarrassed. But I have meetings all week. Business in New York on Thursday. Friday night? Friday works. I'll pick you up. 7? 8. And I'm picking the restaurant this time. That made him smile. Deal. He kissed her then, right there on the sidewalk with morning commuters flowing around them, and Elena stopped caring about anything except the way he held her face like she was something precious. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. Be careful, he said quietly. My world knows about you now. Marco saw you. My driver knows where you live. By tomorrow, everyone who matters will know I brought someone home. They'll wonder who you are, what you mean to me. What do I mean to you? I don't know yet, but enough that I'm worried about you. Enough that I'm already thinking about how to keep you safe. I can take care of myself. I know, but let me worry anyway. Elena stepped back, breaking the contact before she could change her mind about leaving. Friday, 8 o'clock. Don't be late. I won't. She walked away without looking back, afraid if she did, she'd turn around and never leave. The subway station was 2 blocks away, and Elena felt like she was moving through water, her mind still half in Luca's apartment, replaying every word and touch. Her phone buzzed the moment she hit the platform. Luca. Already missing you. Is that pathetic? Elena. Yes. Also, same. Luca. Friday feels very far away. Elena. It's 4 days. Luca. 4 days too many. Elena smiled at her phone like an idiot while waiting for the train and didn't even care that other commuters were staring. She'd walked into something dangerous and complicated and possibly doomed. She'd ignored every warning, every red flag, every rational thought. She'd stayed with a man who'd confessed to murder and chosen to believe he could be more than his worst moments. Sophie was going to kill her. But as the train pulled into the station and Elena stepped aboard, heading back to her normal life, she couldn't bring herself to regret any of it. Because for the first time in years, she felt like she was living instead of just surviving. And maybe that was worth any risk. Sophie was waiting on the couch when Elena walked through the door, coffee mug in hand, expression somewhere between furious and terrified. 18 hours, Sophie said, her voice deadly calm. You were gone for 18 hours with a man who is literally known for making people disappear. I texted you that I was fine. You texted me at 2 in the morning saying still alive, we'll explain later, and then nothing until 20 minutes ago. Do you have any idea how many true crime podcasts start exactly like this? Elena dropped her purse on the counter, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night was crashing hard. I'm sorry. I should have checked in more. Yeah, you should have. Sophie set down her mug, and her anger cracked into genuine concern. Elena, what the hell are you doing? This guy is dangerous. Not bad boy with a motorcycle dangerous, actually dangerous. People are afraid of him for real reasons. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've lost your mind over a pretty face and some attention. That stung because part of it was true. Elena sat down heavily on the opposite end of the couch. He told me everything, she said quietly, about his past, about the violence, about who he really is, and I stayed anyway. Why? Because he was honest, because underneath everything, he's just tired and lonely and trying to be better than he was. Elena looked at Sophie, and because for the first time in years, I feel like I matter to someone, like I'm more than just surviving. Sophie's expression softened. You matter to me. You know that, right? I do. But this is different. He looks at me like... Elena struggled for words. Like I'm something rare. Something worth protecting, and maybe that's stupid or naive, but I haven't felt that way since my mom died. Oh, honey. Sophie moved closer, pulling Elena into a hug. You're not stupid. You're lonely and grieving and looking for connection, but you're also putting yourself in danger for a guy you just met. I know the risks. Do you, though? Because it's one thing to know intellectually that someone's dangerous. It's another thing to actually live with the consequences. Sophie pulled back, holding Elena's shoulders. What happens when his enemies come after you? What happens when you see him actually hurt someone? What happens when you realize the man you're falling for has done things that can't be undone or forgiven? I don't know. But I want to find out. Sophie stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. You're really doing this? Yeah, I am. Then I need you to promise me something. If things get bad, really bad, you'll leave. You won't stay because you think you can save him or because you're in too deep. You'll just go. I promise. And you'll keep me updated. Real updates, not cryptic texts at 2 a.m. Deal. Sophie hugged her again, tighter this time. I still think you're crazy, but I love you, and I'll be here when this inevitably blows up in your face. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Someone has to be realistic. Sophie stood, heading for the kitchen. Now I'm making you breakfast because you look like death, and you're going to tell me everything, and I mean everything. So Elena did. She told Sophie about the restaurant, about Luca's apartment, about the confessions and the coffee, and the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious. She left out the kissing, some things were private, but everything else came spilling out. Sophie listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through disbelief, concern, and reluctant understanding. He sounds like a romance novel character, Sophie said when Elena finished. Damaged hero, dark past, falls for the innocent girl who sees his humanity. I know how it sounds. Do you? Because here's the thing about romance novels. They end when the couple gets together. They don't show what happens 6 months later when the damaged hero's PTSD kicks in, or his criminal empire needs attention, or the innocent girl realizes she's in over her head. This isn't a novel, Soph. No, it's your life, which is why I'm worried. Sophie pushed scrambled eggs across the table. Just be careful, okay? Keep your eyes open. Don't let the intensity make you ignore red flags. I won't. But even as Elena said it, she wondered if it was true. Because she could still feel Luca's hands in her hair, still hear his voice saying he wanted her in his life, still see the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd confessed his worst moments. And all of that felt more real than any warning or concern. The week crawled by like molasses. Elena tried to focus on her novel, on revising the scenes that weren't working, but every other paragraph she'd check her phone for messages from Luca. They texted constantly, nothing deep, just small moments. Pictures of his coffee, her bookshelf, his view of the harbor, her favorite writing spot in the library. Little breadcrumbs that built something between them. On Wednesday, flowers arrived at her apartment. No card, but Elena knew who they were from. Peonies, her favorite, in shades of pink and white that must have cost a fortune. He's trying to romance you, Sophie observed from the doorway. Is it working? On you? Definitely. On me? I'm still suspicious. Thursday afternoon, Elena's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Ward? The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. This is Claire Martinez. I work for Luca Moretti. Elena's stomach dropped. Is he okay? He's fine. He asked me to call because he's in meetings all day and wanted you to know he's thinking about you. Also, he wanted me to remind you about tomorrow night and ask if you have any dietary restrictions for the restaurant you're choosing. It was so absurdly formal and sweet that Elena couldn't help smiling. No restrictions. Tell him I said thank you for the flowers. Will do. Have a good day, Ms. Ward. The call disconnected, and Elena sat there staring at her phone, equal parts charmed and disturbed that Luca had assigned his assistant to call her. That was weird, right? She asked Sophie. So weird. Also kind of adorable. I hate that it's adorable. Friday night arrived with Elena standing in front of her closet, trying to figure out what you wore to dinner with a man who probably owned the restaurant. She settled on a simple black dress, the one nice piece she owned that wasn't borrowed, and boots, because she still wasn't entirely comfortable in heels. Sophie helped with her makeup, keeping it natural but polished. You look beautiful, Sophie said, stepping back to assess her work. And terrified. I am terrified. Good. Fear means you're thinking clearly. Sophie squeezed her shoulder. Have fun. Be smart. Text me when you get there and when you leave. Yes, Mom. I'm serious, Elena. This guy might be charming, but he's also dangerous. Don't forget that. I won't. Luca texted at 7:45 that he was downstairs. Elena grabbed her purse, kissed Sophie's cheek, and tried to control her breathing on the elevator ride down. He was waiting on the sidewalk, leaning against a different car than before, something sleek and black that probably cost more than Elena's student loans. He wore jeans and a dark sweater, somehow managing to make casual look expensive, and when he saw her, his entire face changed. Hi, he said, and there was something almost shy in it. Hi yourself. He opened the car door for her, and Elena caught the scent of his cologne, woodsy and warm. They drove through the city with jazz playing softly on the stereo, and Elena directed him to a small Italian place in the North End that she'd found during college. This is your restaurant choice? Luca asked, looking at the worn storefront. Is that a problem? No, just unexpected, he smiled. I like it. Inside was cozy chaos. Mismatched chairs, checkered tablecloths, walls covered in family photos and Italian flags. The owner, Mrs. Caruso, recognized Elena immediately and pulled her into a hug that smelled like garlic and red sauce. Elena, where have you been? And who is this handsome man? This is Luca. Luca, this is Mrs. Caruso. She makes the best carbonara in Boston. Mrs. Caruso studied Luca with sharp eyes, then said something in rapid Italian that made him laugh. What did she say? Elena asked as they were seated in a corner booth. She said I better treat you right, or she'll hit me with a wooden spoon. She's very protective. I can see that. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I missed you this week. It was 4 days. Still too long. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Tell me about your week. Did you write? Some. I've been revising the scenes you read, trying to make them more honest, like you said. And it's harder than I thought. Honesty requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is terrifying. Tell me about it. He smiled, but there was weight behind it. I spent all week in meetings, making decisions about properties and contracts, and the whole time I was thinking about you, about whether you'd changed your mind, whether you'd realized what a mistake this is. Did you want me to change my mind? No, but I wouldn't blame you if you did. He paused as Mrs. Caruso appeared with wine and bread, fussing over them in Italian before disappearing. My world found out about you. There are already questions, speculation about who you are and what you mean to me. What do you tell them? Nothing. But my silence says enough. He squeezed her hand. I'm trying to protect you, but the truth is, just being seen with me puts you at risk. My enemies now know you exist, that you matter. Should I be scared? Probably. But I've assigned people to watch your building, your routes to work and school. You won't see them, but they're there. Elena pulled her hand back. You're having me followed? Protected. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've made decisions about my safety without asking me. His jaw tightened. Would you prefer I do nothing? Let you wander around unprotected while people who want to hurt me figure out that hurting you is easier. I prefer you talk to me before making decisions that affect my life. They stared at each other across the table, the first real tension crackling between them. You're right, Luca finally said. I should have asked. I'm used to making decisions alone, used to controlling everything. But if this, he gestured between them, is going to work, I need to include you, even when my instinct is to protect first and ask later. Thank you. But I'm not pulling the security. You can be angry about it, but I'm not risking your safety to respect your independence. So much for including me in decisions. This one isn't negotiable. Everything else we can discuss. But your safety? That's mine to handle. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to push back against his control, but she could see the fear underneath his certainty. He wasn't trying to own her. He was terrified of losing her. Fine, but I want to know who these people are, what they're doing, and I want updates. No surprises. Deal. He flagged down Mrs. Caruso, ordering in Italian, then turned back to Elena. I'm going to mess this up a lot, aren't I? Probably. So will I. How do we not destroy each other? We keep talking, keep being honest, keep choosing each other even when it's hard. That simple? That complicated. Dinner arrived, carbonara for her, ossobuco for him, and they ate while talking about safer things. Books they'd read, places they wanted to travel, stupid things they'd done as teenagers. The tension from earlier dissolved into something easier, and Elena felt herself relaxing into the rhythm of just being with him. Can I ask you something? Elena said over tiramisu. Always. Do you regret it? The path you took, the empire you built? If you could go back, would you choose differently? Luca was quiet for a long time, his spoon pushing dessert around his plate. I used to think I would. Used to lie awake wondering what would have happened if I'd run instead of stayed, if I'd let them kill me rather than become what they needed. He looked up at her. But then I realized I can't regret the choices that led me to who I am now. Because regretting them means regretting everything, including this, you. And I don't regret you. Even though I'm complicated and stubborn and probably going to drive you crazy. Especially because of that. He smiled. You make me want to be better, Elena. Not perfect. I'm too far gone for that. But better. More honest. More human. That's worth every risk. After dinner, they walked through the North End, past brick buildings and narrow streets that had stood since before the Revolution. Luca held her hand, and Elena felt the weight of eyes watching them. His security, probably, invisible but present. Does it ever get easier? She asked. Living like this? Always being watched? Always being careful? No, you just get used to it. Stop noticing the weight until someone points it out. I'm pointing it out. I know. That's why you're dangerous. They ended up back at his apartment, and this time Elena didn't hesitate at the threshold. This time it felt less like stepping into the unknown and more like coming home. Luca made coffee, successfully this time, and they sat by the windows watching the city lights reflect off the harbor. I have to go to New York again next week, he said. Business meetings, property acquisition. Normally I'd go alone, but he paused. Come with me. To New York? Just for a few days? I'll handle business during the day. We can have dinners together. You can write in the hotel. It's probably stupid and impractical, but I don't want to spend another week missing you. Elena should say no. Should maintain boundaries, keep her independence, not get swept up in the intensity of this thing between them. But the hope in his voice, the vulnerability in asking, made her decision easy. Okay. Yeah, I'll come. He kissed her then, soft and grateful, and Elena felt something settle between them. Not certainty exactly, but possibility. The sense that they were building something, however messy and complicated it might be. They talked until past midnight about everything and nothing. He told her about a property deal that had fallen through, about an employee whose wife was sick, and how he'd quietly paid her medical bills. She told him about a scene in her novel that finally clicked, about Sophie's continued skepticism, about the weird guilt of being happy when her life was supposedly falling apart. Your life isn't falling apart, Luca said. It's just changing. Growth looks like chaos until you're through it. When did you become philosophical? I read a lot between meetings. Helps me feel less like a criminal and more like a person. You are a person. A complicated, frustrating, surprisingly sweet person. Sweet? You sent your assistant to call me. You arranged security without telling me. You're currently trying to hide the fact that you're exhausted because you think I won't stay if I see you tired. He blinked. How did you? Your eyes. You get this look when you're running on empty, like you're holding yourself together through sheer will. I'm fine. Luca. He sighed, scrubbing a hand over his face. I haven't slept well this week. Keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, all the dangers I'm pulling you into. And then I think about not having you in my life. And that's worse. So sleep now. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You should go home. It's late and you have... I don't have anything that matters more than this. Elena stood, pulling him up with her. Come on. Show me where you sleep. Elena, I'm not trying to seduce you. I'm trying to take care of you. There's a difference. His bedroom was as unexpectedly personal as the rest of his apartment. More books, a worn armchair, windows overlooking the water. Elena pushed him toward the bed, ignoring his protests. Lie down. You're bossy. And you're deflecting. Lie down. He did, and Elena lay beside him, her head on his shoulder. She could feel the tension in his body, the careful control he maintained even now. Tell me something, she said quietly. Something you've never told anyone else. Why? Because secrets keep you isolated, and I want you to know you don't have to be alone anymore. He was silent for so long Elena thought he might not answer. Then, quietly, I'm tired. Not physically, though that too. But tired of being strong. Tired of making decisions that affect hundreds of people. Tired of never being able to let my guard down. Sometimes I think about just stopping. Walking away from everything and disappearing somewhere no one knows my name. Why don't you? Because I'm a coward. Because it's easier to keep doing what I know than to risk becoming nothing. You wouldn't be nothing. You'd just be Luca. Not Luca Moretti, the empire builder, or Luca Moretti, the feared businessman. Just you. I don't know if there's a me underneath all of this anymore. There is. I've seen him. He's the guy who burns eggs and loves poetry and looks at me like I hung the moon. That's who you are when you stop performing. His arm tightened around her. Stay tonight. Just sleep. I don't want to be alone. Okay. They lay there in the dark, listening to each other breathe, and Elena felt him finally relax. His breathing deepened, evened out, and she realized with something like awe that he'd fallen asleep, that he trusted her enough to be vulnerable, to let go of control, to just rest. She should probably feel strange about this, sharing a bed with a man she'd known for less than a week, but instead it felt natural. Right. Like they'd been moving toward this moment since they'd first locked eyes across the ballroom. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and Luca watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "How long have you been awake?" she asked, her voice rough with sleep. "About an hour. I didn't want to wake you." "Creepy much?" He smiled. "Maybe, but you looked peaceful. I liked watching you." Still creepy, but she was smiling too. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I have in months. You're apparently good for my insomnia. Add it to my resume. Elena Ward, writer, night owl, insomnia cure." He laughed, pulling her closer. "Stay for breakfast. Real breakfast this time. I'll prove I can cook more than just burned eggs." Bold claim. I'm feeling confident. They made breakfast together, pancakes that were only slightly lumpy, bacon that didn't burn, coffee that actually tasted good. They ate at his kitchen counter while reading sections of the newspaper out loud, arguing about politics and laughing at terrible op-eds. It was domestic and easy and terrifying in how right it felt. "I could get used to this," Luca said quietly. "Don't. We'll jinx it." "You believe in jinxes?" "I believe in not tempting fate." Elena set down her coffee. "This thing between us, it's good right now, really good. But we both know it's not going to stay simple. Your world is going to intrude, or mine is, and we're going to have to figure out if what we have is strong enough to survive reality." "Wow, that's optimistic." "I'm being realistic. Sophie thinks I'm crazy for staying. My editor would have a heart attack if she knew I was dating someone like you. And your people probably think I'm a liability. They think you're a mystery. No one can figure out why I'm interested in a struggling writer with no connections." "Gee, thanks. That came out wrong." He turned to face her fully. "What I mean is, you're not what people expect. You're not trying to use me for access or money or power. You're just you. And that's so rare in my world that no one knows what to make of it." "What do you make of it?" "I think I'm falling for you, and it's terrifying." The honesty of it stole Elena's breath. She could make a joke, deflect, protect herself from the vulnerability of admitting she felt the same. Or she could be brave. "I think I'm falling for you too." "And you're right. It's terrifying." "Where does that leave us?" "Figuring it out as we go." She reached for his hand. "No promises about forever. No declarations we can't keep. Just honesty and trying and seeing where this goes." "I can work with that." They spent the rest of the morning in his apartment, Elena writing on his couch, while he worked through emails on his laptop. It was comfortable, companionable, the kind of quiet intimacy that felt more significant than any grand gesture. Around noon, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Sophie, you're still alive?" Elena, "Yes. At Luca's. Coming home soon." Sophie, "Define soon." Elena, "Few hours?" Sophie, "I'm ordering Chinese for dinner. You're buying and you're telling me everything." Elena smiled at her phone, then looked up to find Luca watching her. "Sophie?" "Demanding a full report in Chinese food. She's protective of you. She's worried I'm going to get hurt. She's probably right to worry." Luca, "No, let me finish." He closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. "I can't promise I won't hurt you. My life is complicated and dangerous, and there are things I can't change. But I can promise I'll try. I'll be as honest as I can be. I'll protect you as much as you'll let me. and I won't take you for granted. That's all I'm asking for. Then we have a deal. Elena packed her things slowly, reluctant to leave the bubble they'd created. At the door, Luca pulled her close. Tuesday, he said. I'll pick you up Tuesday morning for New York. Pack light. We're only going for 3 days. Okay. And Elena? Thank you. For what? For staying, for seeing past the reputation, for making me believe I could be more than what I've been. She kissed him instead of answering, pouring everything she couldn't say into the press of her mouth against his. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. I'll see you Tuesday, she managed. Tuesday, I'll text you details. Elena forced herself to walk away, down the elevator, out onto the street. She caught the subway home, her mind replaying every moment of the last 24 hours. Sophie was indeed waiting with Chinese food and approximately 1,000 questions. Elena answered them all, watching Sophie's expression cycle through concern, skepticism, and reluctant acceptance. You're really doing this, Sophie finally said. I really am. Then I'm here. For whatever comes next, even when I think you're being an idiot. Especially then. They ate lo mein straight from the cartons and watched terrible reality TV, and Elena felt grounded again. Reminded that whatever happened with Luca, she still had this, friendship and normalcy and home. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at her ceiling, Elena couldn't stop thinking about the way Luca had looked at her. Like she was something precious. Like she mattered. And she wondered if this was what it felt like to fall in love. Terrifying and exhilarating and inevitable all at once. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Luca. Good night, Elena. Thank you for today. Elena. Good night. See you Tuesday. Luca. Can't wait. Elena smiled in the dark, clutching her phone like a lifeline, and let herself fall. Tuesday morning arrived with rain hammering against Elena's window, and Sophie standing in her doorway holding coffee like a peace offering. Last chance to back out, Sophie said. Elena zipped her suitcase closed. I'm going. I know. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Sophie set the coffee on the dresser. Promise me you'll keep your phone charged. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you'll leave. I don't care if you're in the middle of a fancy dinner or he's being sweet. Trust your gut. I promise. And text me. Constantly. I want updates every few hours or I'm calling the police. You're being dramatic. You're dating a man who confessed to murder. I'm being appropriately cautious. Elena hugged her roommate tight. I love you for worrying, but I'm going to be fine. You better be, because if he hurts you, I will hunt him down with a baseball bat and no jury will convict me. They were both laughing when Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Luca saying he was downstairs. Sophie walked her to the door, studying Elena's face one more time. You're happy, Sophie said, like she'd just realized it. Scared, but happy. Yeah, I am. Then go. Be careful. Come back in one piece. Elena grabbed her suitcase and headed down, her stomach fluttering with nerves and excitement. Luca was waiting by the car, holding an umbrella, and when he saw her, his whole face lit up. Hi, he said, taking her suitcase. Hi yourself. He kissed her right there on the rain-soaked sidewalk, quick and warm. Ready? As I'll ever be. The drive to the airport was comfortable, filled with easy conversation about nothing important. Marco drove while Luca's hand rested on Elena's knee, his thumb tracing absent patterns that made it hard for her to concentrate on anything he was saying. At the airport, they bypassed the main terminal entirely, driving directly onto the tarmac where a small private jet waited. You've got to be kidding me, Elena said. What? A private jet? You have a private jet? I lease it, and it's not as extravagant as it sounds. I need to be able to travel on my own schedule for business. Luca, I've never even flown first class. This is... She gestured helplessly at the sleek aircraft. This is insane. He smiled, clearly amused by her reaction. Wait until you see the inside. The interior was all cream leather and polished wood, more living room than airplane. Elena sank into a seat that was more comfortable than her bed at home, and tried not to think about how much this must cost. Champagne? A flight attendant appeared with a bottle. It's 9 a.m, Elena said. When has that ever stopped anyone? Luca accepted 2 glasses. Besides, you look like you need something to calm your nerves. I'm not nervous. You're gripping the armrest so hard your knuckles are white. Elena forced herself to relax her hands. Fine. I'm a little nervous. This is all very much? Yeah. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. You can say no to any of this. The jet, the hotel, all of it. We can fly commercial, stay somewhere normal. I want you comfortable. No, it's not that. I keep forgetting how different your world is from mine. And then something like this happens, and I remember. Does it bother you? I don't know yet. Ask me again in 3 days. The flight was smooth, and Elena spent most of it staring out the window at clouds while Luca worked on his laptop. It was oddly domestic, this comfortable silence between them, and Elena found herself sneaking glances at him when he wasn't looking. The concentration on his face, the way he'd occasionally run a hand through his hair when frustrated, the small smile when something in his email apparently pleased him. You're staring, he said without looking up. You're nice to look at. That made him glance over, something warm in his expression. So are you. They landed in New York to gray skies and colder temperatures. Another car was waiting, another driver who nodded respectfully at Luca before loading their bags. The hotel was in Midtown, all glass and steel and minimalist luxury. Their suite overlooked Central Park, with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. This is too much, Elena said, staring at the space that was easily 5 times the size of her apartment. It's what they had available. Luca was already on his phone, scrolling through messages. I have a meeting in an hour. Will you be okay here? What am I supposed to do in a hotel suite for 3 hours? Right. Order room service. Explore the city if you want. Just take Marco with you. I don't need a babysitter. He looked up, his expression serious. Elena, this isn't Boston. The people who know about you in my world will know we're here. I need you to be smart about this. Fine. I'll take Marco. She dropped her bag on the couch. What time will you be back? Dinner. 7 at the latest. We have reservations at 8. Where? Surprise. He crossed to her, tilting her chin up for a kiss. I'll miss you. It's a few hours. Still. After he left, Elena stood in the middle of the massive suite feeling suddenly unmoored. She pulled out her laptop, tried to write, but the words wouldn't come. Everything felt surreal, the expensive furniture, the view, the fact that she was in New York with a man who had a private jet, and enemies who might want to hurt her. Her phone rang. Sophie. You made it? Yeah, we're at the hotel. And? How's the mob boss treating you? He's not a mob boss. And he's attentive, almost too attentive. What does that mean? Elena walked to the window, looking down at the street far below. It means he's assigned me a security detail. Means I can't leave without someone following me. Means his world is starting to feel very real, and I'm not sure I'm equipped for it. Then come home. You can catch a flight this afternoon, be back by dinner. I don't want to come home. Elena, I know it sounds crazy, but when I'm with him, I feel alive, like I matter, like I'm part of something bigger than my tiny apartment and my failing novel. You matter without him. You know that, right? I do, but it's different. He looks at me like... Elena stopped, trying to find the words. Like I'm the most important thing in the room, and I've never had that before. Sophie sighed. Just be careful, okay? Don't lose yourself trying to fit into his world. They talked for another 20 minutes before Elena let her go, promising to text updates. Then she forced herself to sit down and write, channeling the confused mess of emotions into her novel. The words came easier now, rawer, more honest than anything she'd written before. She was deep into a scene when the suite door opened and Luca walked in looking exhausted. You're early, Elena said, checking her phone. It was only 5. Meeting wrapped faster than expected. How was your afternoon? Productive. I wrote 6 pages. That's good, right? Really good. The best I've done in months. She closed her laptop. You look tired. It's been a long day. He loosened his tie, shrugging off his jacket. My partners are pushing for an expansion I'm not sure about. There are concerns about territory, about stepping on toes that shouldn't be stepped on. Can you say no? Not without consequences. He poured himself a drink from the bar. Want one? Sure. He made her something with gin and cucumber that tasted expensive and refreshing, then sank onto the couch beside her. Tell me about your day. he said. "I want to hear about something normal." So Elena did. She told him about the scene she'd written, about a conversation she'd had with the concierge who'd recommended a bookstore nearby, about ordering the most expensive thing on the room service menu just because she could. "What did you order?" "A $40 burger. It was good, but not $40 good." He laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. That's the secret of expensive hotels. Nothing is ever as good as the price tag suggests. Then why stay here? Because the security is better, because I know the owner, because... He paused. Because I wanted to give you something nice. Show you a piece of my world that isn't dangerous or complicated. Luca, I don't need expensive hotels or private jets. I just need you. Something in his expression cracked. You say that now. But what about in 6 months, a year? When the novelty wears off and you realize what you've gotten yourself into? Then we'll figure it out, like we've been doing. He set down his drink and pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They stayed like that for a while, wrapped around each other, and Elena felt the weight of whatever had happened in his meeting slowly lift. When he finally pulled back, he looked more himself. We should get ready for dinner. The restaurant is across town. What should I wear? Something nice. It's a formal place. Elena didn't own anything formal enough for whatever restaurant Luca had in mind, and he must have seen the panic in her face because he immediately shook his head. I had something sent up. It's in the bedroom closet. If you don't like it, we'll find something else. In the closet was a dress that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. Midnight blue silk that felt like water against her skin. It fit perfectly, which meant Luca had somehow figured out her size without asking. She should probably be bothered by that. Instead, she was just grateful. When she emerged from the bedroom, Luca was waiting in a dark suit that made him look dangerous and sophisticated all at once. His eyes went wide when he saw her. You look... He stopped, seeming to lose his words. Perfect. You look perfect. The dress does all the work. No, it's you. He crossed to her, his hand settling on her waist. Thank you for being here, for coming with me, for giving me this. This? A chance to pretend I'm someone normal. Someone who gets to take a beautiful woman to dinner and not worry about who's watching or what it means. We're still pretending. Always. In my world, you never stop performing. The restaurant was everything Elena expected. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters who moved like dancers. They were shown to a private table in the back, away from the main dining room, and Elena noticed the way people's heads turned as Luca passed. They know you, she said once they were seated. I eat here when I'm in New York. The owner is an associate. Is everyone in your life an associate or an enemy? Are there any actual friends? He considered this while examining the wine list. A few. Marco, my driver, we grew up together. Claire, my assistant, she's been with me for 6 years and probably knows my schedule better than I do. And there's David, my attorney. He's represented me since the beginning, knows where all the bodies are buried. Literally? Some of them. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. You'll meet them eventually. They'll want to assess you, make sure you're not a threat. A threat to what? To me. To the Empire. To the careful balance I've maintained for 15 years. He ordered wine in fluent French, then turned his attention fully to her. But enough about my world. Tell me about yours. About the novel. Is it actually working now? I think so. The honesty you talked about, it's making everything sharper, more real. Read me something. Here? Why not? So Elena pulled out her phone and read him a section she'd written that afternoon, her voice low enough that only he could hear. It was about two people trying to navigate the space between who they were and who they wanted to be together, and when she finished, Luca was quiet. That's us, he finally said. Isn't it? Maybe. I told you I was going to write you without permission. I don't mind, as long as you get the ending right. What ending would that be? The honest one, whatever that looks like. Dinner arrived in courses, each more elaborate than the last. They talked and laughed and forgot about the performance for moments at a time, and Elena felt that dangerous thing happening again. The falling. The certainty that this person across from her mattered more than they should after only 2 weeks. They were halfway through dessert when Luca's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression changed instantly, everything shuddering closed. What's wrong? Nothing, just business. Luca. He set down his phone, but Elena could see the tension in his jaw. There's been a complication. Something I need to handle. Now? Soon, but not... He reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm sorry. I wanted tonight to be perfect. It has been perfect, but you need to go do whatever this is. I don't want to leave you. So don't. Take me with you. He shook his head immediately. This isn't something you should see. Why? Because it's dangerous. Because it's the part of your life you want to keep hidden? Elena kept her voice level. You said you wanted honesty. That goes both ways. If this is your world, show me. Stop protecting me from reality. Elena, I'm not asking you to put me in danger, but I'm also not going to sit in a hotel room while you deal with things alone. If we're doing this, really doing this, then I need to understand all of it. He stared at her for a long moment, and she watched him war with himself. Protection versus honesty. Control versus trust. It's not going to be pretty, he finally said. I didn't think it would be. And if you see something that changes how you feel about me, then we'll deal with that too. But you don't get to make that choice for me. He paid the check quickly, his movements sharp with tension. In the car, he made a call in rapid Italian that Elena couldn't follow, his voice clipped and cold. This was a different Luca than the one who'd read her poetry or burned eggs in his kitchen. This was the businessman, the empire builder, the man people feared. They pulled up to a warehouse in Queens, the kind of neighborhood where people didn't ask questions. Marco opened the door, his expression grim. You sure about this, boss? Marco said, his eyes flicking to Elena. She wants to see, so she'll see. Inside was concrete and shadows and the smell of rust and something else Elena couldn't identify. A group of men stood in the center, 4 of Luca's people surrounding one man tied to a chair. The man's face was bloodied, his eye already swelling shut. Elena's stomach turned, but she forced herself to keep walking. Who is he? She asked quietly. Someone who stole from me, took money from one of my accounts, thought he could disappear to Miami. Luca's voice was flat, empty. He was wrong. He walked toward the man, and Elena watched his entire posture change. He moved differently here, more predatory, more dangerous. This was the wolf people warned each other about. Mr. Castellano, Luca said, his voice carrying through the warehouse. I believe you have something that belongs to me. The man spat blood. I don't know what you're talking about. See, that's where we have a problem, because I have bank records that say otherwise. Wire transfers to an account in your wife's name, hotel receipts from Miami, and I really, really don't like being lied to. Elena stood frozen near the entrance, watching. Part of her wanted to run, to unsee this version of Luca, but she'd asked for truth. This was it. It was only 50,000, Castellano said. You've got millions. You wouldn't even notice I notice everything. Luca crouched in front of him. You worked for me for 3 years. I paid you well, treated you fairly. And this is how you repay that? By stealing from me? I had debts. Everyone has debts. That's not an excuse. Luca stood, adjusting his cuffs with careful precision. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return every dollar you took, and then you're going to leave Boston. If I ever see you again, if I hear your name mentioned in any of my circles, this conversation ends very differently. Understand? Castellano nodded frantically. Good. Because I'm being generous tonight. The next person who crosses me won't be so lucky. Luca turned to his men. Get the money. Make sure he's on a bus tonight. He walked back to Elena, his expression unreadable. Let's go. In the car, the silence was suffocating. Elena stared out the window, processing what she'd seen. The violence had been more psychological than physical, but it was violence nonetheless. The threat underneath every word, the fear in Castellano's eyes, the cold efficiency of it all. Say something, Luca finally said. I don't know what to say. You're scared. A little, but not of you. Elena turned to look at him. I'm scared of how easy that was for you, how quickly you became someone else. That's who I am, Elena. The man in the warehouse. The rest is just performance. I don't believe that. You saw... I saw you being what your world requires, but that doesn't mean it's who you really are. Elena reached for his hand. The man who makes terrible coffee and reads poetry and looks at me like I'm something precious. That's real too. Maybe more real than the performance you put on for men like Castellano. How can you still... He stopped, shaking his head. I just threatened a man, had him beaten, and you're sitting here holding my hand like nothing happened. Because something did happen. I saw the rest of you, the part you tried to hide. And yeah, it's hard to see, but it doesn't erase everything else. Elena squeezed his fingers. You let him live, Luca. You could have done worse. I could see it in his eyes that he expected worse. But you gave him a chance to make it right. That doesn't make me good. No, but it makes you human, complicated and flawed and trying to be better than you were. That's all any of us can do. He pulled her close, his face pressed into her hair. I don't know how to do this. How to be both. The man my world needs and the man you make me want to be. Maybe you don't have to choose. Maybe you just have to find balance. What if there is no balance? What if I can't keep you safe from this? Then we'll figure it out. Together. They rode the rest of the way in silence, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. Back at the hotel, Luca poured them both drinks with hands that weren't quite steady. I'm sorry you had to see that, he said. I'm not. You were right. I needed to understand what your world actually looks like. And now that you do, Elena considered the question honestly. It scares me. The violence, the control, the way people fear you. But it also makes sense. You built something from nothing, and you protect it the only way you know how. That's a generous interpretation. Maybe, or maybe I'm just trying to see the whole picture instead of just the parts that fit my comfort zone. He set down his glass and crossed to where she stood by the window. I have to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay, can you live with this? Really live with it? Not just tonight, but 6 months from now, a year from now. When something like this happens again, because it will. When you see me make hard choices that hurt people, when my world crashes into yours in ways you can't control. Elena thought about Sophie's warnings, about the rational voice in her head screaming that this was too much, too fast, too dangerous, about the smart choice, the safe choice. Then she thought about Luca reading her writing with genuine interest, about the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd confessed he hadn't been happy in 15 years, about the way he held her like she was something precious even when he was tired and scared and barely holding himself together. I don't know, she said honestly. I can't promise you forever or tell you I'll never freak out about this, but I can promise I'll try. I'll stay as long as I can, as long as it feels right, and I'll be honest with you when it doesn't. That's more than I deserve. Probably, but you're stuck with it anyway. He kissed her then, desperate and relieved, and Elena tasted the fear underneath. They moved to the bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions, and Elena learned what it felt like to be with someone who'd shown her their worst and was still choosing to be vulnerable. Luca touched her like she was an anchor, like she was the thing keeping him human, and Elena let herself drown in the intensity of it. Afterward, they lay tangled together in expensive sheets, the city lights filtering through the windows. Tell me about your mother, Luca said quietly. It was so unexpected that Elena almost didn't answer. Why? Because you mentioned her before, and I want to know. What was she like? So Elena told him. About a woman who'd worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, who'd believed Elena could be anything she wanted if she just worked hard enough. About hospital rooms and chemo that didn't work, and final conversations about not giving up on dreams. She'd hate this, Elena said. You, me, all of it. She wanted me to be safe, to have a stable life. Would she be wrong? Maybe not. But she also taught me to take chances, to not let fear make my decisions. Elena shifted to look at him. What about your parents? You mentioned your father, but not your mother. She left when I was 12. Couldn't handle my father's world anymore. His voice was carefully neutral. I haven't seen her since. I'm sorry. Don't be. She made the smart choice, got out before it destroyed her completely. Do you ever wonder what happened to her? Sometimes. But I learned early that wondering doesn't change anything. You just move forward with what you have. They talked until Elena's eyes grew heavy, until Luca's voice started to blur. She fell asleep with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, and for the first time since meeting him, she wasn't afraid of what morning would bring. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Luca was already dressed, sitting at the desk with his laptop, but he looked up when he heard her move. "Morning, did I wake you?" "No." Elena stretched, pulling the sheet around herself. "What time is it?" 9. "I have another meeting at 11, but I ordered breakfast. Should be here in 10 minutes. "You're very efficient." "I try." He closed the laptop. "How are you feeling about last night?" "Which part? The dinner, the warehouse, or after?" "All of it," Elena considered while getting up and finding one of the hotel robes. "Honestly, I'm still processing, but I don't regret coming with you. To the warehouse, I mean. It helped me understand." "And the after?" She smiled. "Definitely don't regret that part." Breakfast arrived, more food than two people could possibly eat, and they sat together at the small table by the window. Luca had a meeting across town, Elena had more writing to do, and it felt oddly domestic despite being in a luxury hotel 1,000 miles from home. "I'll be back by 3, Luca said, kissing her forehead before he left. "We can explore the city if you want, or just stay in. We'll figure it out." After he left, Elena tried to write, but couldn't focus. Her mind kept replaying the scene in the warehouse, the cold efficiency of Luca's threats, the fear in Castellano's eyes. She'd meant what she told Luca about understanding, but understanding didn't erase the reality of what she'd witnessed. Her phone rang. Sophie again. "Tell me you're still alive and he hasn't locked you in a tower." "Still alive. No towers." Elena moved to the window. "But something happened last night." She told Sophie everything. The dinner, the warehouse, the aftermath. Sophie listened without interrupting, and when Elena finished, there was a long silence. "You're in way over your head," Sophie finally said. "I know. But you're staying anyway." "Yeah." "Elena, I know what you're going to say. That I'm being stupid, that I'm letting intensity confuse me, that I'm going to get hurt. And you're probably right about all of it. But Soph, when I'm with him, I feel like I'm finally living instead of just surviving. And maybe that's worth the risk. Or maybe you're addicted to the drama. Maybe this isn't about him at all. Maybe it's about you wanting to feel something, anything, after being numb for so long." The words hit harder than they should have because there was truth in them. Elena had been numb, going through the motions, existing but not really living, and Luca had changed that. "Maybe you're right," Elena said slowly. "But even if you are, does that make it less real? The feelings, the connection, does it matter why it started if what we have now is genuine? I don't know. But I think you need to figure out the difference between actual love and just intensity, drama, the rush of feeling alive." After they hung up, Elena sat with Sophie's words. Was this real or just adrenaline? Was she falling for Luca or just the idea of him, the escape he represented from her ordinary life? She didn't have answers. But when he came back that afternoon, when his face lit up seeing her, when he pulled her close and asked about her day like it mattered, Elena felt the rightness of it in her bones. They spent the rest of the day being tourists, walking through Central Park, eating hot dogs from a cart, visiting a bookstore where Luca bought her 3 novels she'd mentioned wanting to read. It was normal and easy and everything Elena hadn't expected. That evening, back at the hotel, Luca's phone rang with an unknown number. He glanced at the screen and his entire body tensed. "I need to take this." He stepped onto the balcony, and through the glass, Elena could see his posture change. Rigid, defensive. When he came back inside 5 minutes later, his face was pale. "What happened?" "There's been an incident in Boston. Someone—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "Someone made a move on one of my properties, set fire to a warehouse I own in Dorchester. Was anyone hurt?" "2 of my people were inside. One's in the hospital with smoke inhalation. The other is fine, but—" His jaw clenched. "This is a message. Someone's testing me, seeing if I'll respond." "What are you going to do?" "Go back. Handle it. Send a message of my own." He was already pulling out his phone, making calls. "We need to leave tonight. I'll have the plane ready in 2 hours." Elena watched him transform again into the cold, efficient businessman. Watched him make decisions that would probably result in violence she wouldn't see, but would definitely happen. Luca. He looked up. Whatever you're planning, be careful, please. Something in his expression softened. I will. I promise. The flight back to Boston was tense. Luca spent most of it on calls, his voice low and dangerous. Elena tried to read but couldn't focus, her mind spinning with scenarios she didn't want to imagine. They landed close to midnight. Marco was waiting with the car, his expression grim. How bad? Luca asked as they drove. Bad enough. Whoever did this wanted to make a statement. They left a message. What message? Marco hesitated, glancing at Elena in the rearview mirror. Say it, Luca ordered. They know about her, about Elena. The message said... Marco stopped. Marco. It said pretty girl. Would be a shame if something happened to her. The words hung in the air like ice. Elena felt her blood turn cold, watching Luca's face close off completely. Take us to Elena's apartment, Luca said, his voice flat. Then get everyone we have on finding out who did this. I want names by morning. Boss? Now. At Elena's building, Luca walked her to the door without speaking. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Luca, I need you to pack a bag. Essential items only. You're not staying here. What? Someone threatened you, made it clear they know where you live, so you're not staying here. His eyes met hers, and Elena saw the fear underneath the anger. I can't protect you if you're exposed like this. So what am I supposed to do? Hide? Let you control my entire life because someone made a threat? Yes, exactly that. His hands gripped her shoulders. Elena, this is serious. These aren't people who make empty threats. If they say something's going to happen, it happens. And I cannot... His voice cracked. I can't lose you. Not like this. Elena saw the terror in his eyes, the barely controlled panic. This wasn't about control, it was about fear. Raw, genuine fear that something would happen to her. Okay, she said quietly. I'll pack a bag. But we need to talk about this. Really talk. Not just you making decisions and me following them. After, when you're safe. Please, Elena. She went upstairs, finding Sophie in the living room with the TV on low. Sophie took one look at Elena's face and stood. What happened? Someone threatened me, burned down one of Luca's properties and left a message about me. Elena moved to her room, pulling out a duffel bag. I need to stay somewhere else for a while, until Luca figures out who did it. Elena, this is exactly what I was afraid of. His world is bleeding into yours, and now you're in danger. I know, you were right. About all of it. Elena threw clothes into the bag without really looking. But I can't change it now. Someone knows about me, knows where I live. Running away won't fix that. So you're going to him? Going to let him lock you up somewhere while he handles this? I'm going to let him keep me safe while we figure out what to do. There's a difference. Sophie helped her pack, her movements angry but efficient. Call me. Every day. And if this gets worse, I know. I'll leave. I promise. Downstairs, Luca was pacing by the car, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw Elena, he immediately ended the call. We're going to my place. It's the most secure location I have. Marco will be stationed outside, and I'll have 2 more men on rotation. He took her bag. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted. None of this is what I wanted, but we're dealing with it. At his apartment, the security was immediately obvious. Men in the lobby, someone stationed at his private elevator. Luca checked every room before letting Elena set down her bag, his movements precise and methodical. You should sleep, he said. I have calls to make, people to mobilize, but you need rest. I'm not leaving you alone with this. Elena, no. You let me see your world, remember? The good and the bad. So I'm seeing this too. She sat on his couch, crossing her arms. Make your calls. Do what you need to do, but I'm staying. He stared at her for a long moment, then something in him broke. He sank onto the couch beside her, pulling her close. I'm scared, he said quietly. For the first time in 15 years, I'm actually scared, because I have something to lose now. You. And the thought of someone hurting you because of me. Hey, look at me. Elena cupped his face. We're going to figure this out, together, but you need to stop trying to protect me from everything. Let me help carry some of this. How? By being here. By not running even when it's scary. By reminding you that you're more than just the empire you built. He kissed her, hard and desperate, and Elena felt the fear underneath. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. I love you, he said. I know it's too soon and too intense and probably not what you want to hear right now, but I love you, and that terrifies me more than anything else. Elena's heart stopped. She'd known they were falling, but hearing him say it made it real, made it matter. I love you too, she whispered. And yeah, it terrifies me too. They stayed like that, holding each other while the city lights flickered outside and danger circled closer. And Elena realized that this was it, the moment where she chose. She could run, could go back to her safe, small life, or she could stay and face whatever came next. She chose to stay. The next 72 hours blurred together in a haze of phone calls, security briefings, and tension so thick Elena could taste it. Luca barely slept, spending most nights on the couch with his laptop, coordinating responses to the threat while trying to keep Elena out of the crossfire. She watched him deteriorate, the shadows under his eyes deepening, his temper shortening, his carefully maintained control fraying at the edges. On the third morning, Elena woke to find him standing at the window, staring out at the harbor with a gun on the table beside him. Luca. He didn't turn. Marco identified who's behind the fire. Vincent Romano. He's been trying to move into my territory for 2 years, and apparently he's decided now's the time to make his play. What are you going to do? What I always do? Send a message that's loud enough he won't try again. Elena got up, wrapping herself in one of his shirts, and crossed to stand beside him. And what message is that? The kind that ends with him understanding that touching what's mine has consequences. His voice was flat, empty. He threatened you, Elena. Made it personal. So my response needs to be equally personal. Meaning what? You're going to kill him? Maybe. Depends on how smart he is when we meet. When you meet? Elena grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. You're going to meet with someone who just threatened to hurt me? Are you insane? It's the only way to end this. Face to face, negotiate terms, make it clear that you're off limits. If I don't... He stopped, his jaw clenching. If I don't handle this now, it'll escalate. More fires, more threats, until someone actually gets hurt. So let me come with you. Absolutely not. Why? If this is about me, if I'm the reason you're doing this, then I should be there. Show him I'm not some prize to be won or pawn to be used, that I chose you, and that choice matters. Elena, these meetings, they're not safe. Romano won't play fair. He'll have his own people, his own agenda, and bringing you would just give him leverage. Or it shows him you're not afraid, that threatening me didn't make you weak, it made you more dangerous. Elena held his gaze. You said you wanted honesty between us, that we'd face things together. So let me face this with you. He stared at her for a long moment, conflict warring in his expression. Then quietly, if I bring you, you do exactly what I say. No arguments, no heroics. You stay beside me, you don't speak unless I tell you to, and if things go wrong, you run. Understand? Yes, I mean it, Elena. This isn't like the warehouse. Romano he's unpredictable, violent. If he decides to make a move, it'll happen fast. I understand. He pulled her close, his arms tight around her. If anything happens to you because of this, I'll never forgive myself. Then don't let anything happen. The meeting was set for that evening at a neutral location, a restaurant in the North End that apparently served as Switzerland for Boston's underground. Marco drove, with 2 additional cars following at a distance. Elena sat beside Luca in the back, watching him prepare. He checked his phone obsessively, responded to last-minute updates from his people, and adjusted his jacket repeatedly to ensure the gun holstered at his side was accessible but hidden. You're nervous, Elena said. I'm careful. There's a difference. Luca, if this is too dangerous, it's already too dangerous, but it's necessary. He took her hand, his grip almost painful. When we get inside, stay close. Don't make eye contact with Romano's people. Don't react to anything he says, no matter how inflammatory. Just be my anchor. Remind me why I'm trying to do this the civilized way instead of the permanent one. The restaurant was closed for their meeting, the windows dark, a single light visible in the back. Marco parked and immediately scanned the street, his hand resting on his own weapon. 3 of Romano's cars, he reported. Probably 6 men inside plus Romano himself. We have 4, Luca said. Even odds. Not really even when they're on home territory. Which is why we're not starting a fight. We're having a conversation. Luca turned to Elena. Last chance to stay in the car. Not happening. They walked inside together, Luca's hand on the small of her back. The restaurant's interior was dim, most of the lights off except for a single table in the center where a man sat waiting. Vincent Romano was older than Elena expected. Mid-50s, gray hair, expensive suit that didn't quite hide the bulk of someone who'd fought his way to power. His men stood in the shadows, watching. Moretti, Romano said, not standing. And you brought a date. How civilized. Romano. Luca's voice was cold. You wanted to talk, so talk. Straight to business. I appreciate that. Romano's eyes slid to Elena, assessing. This the girl? The one who's got Boston's most feared bachelor acting like a lovesick teenager. Her name is Elena, and she's off limits. That's what this meeting is about. Off limits, Romano laughed. You think you can claim territory, claim people, and expect everyone else to just respect it? That's not how this works. It's exactly how this works. You want to challenge my business holdings? Fine. We can negotiate, work out terms, but you made this personal when you threatened her. That crosses a line. What line? The one you drew? Moretti, you don't get to make the rules for everyone. Romano leaned back in his chair. You've been on top for too long, got comfortable, forgot that power is only respected when it's backed up by action. I've taken action, asked for this meeting instead of burning your properties in retaliation. That should tell you how seriously I'm trying to keep this from escalating. Or it tells me you've gone soft, that this girl has made you weak. Luca's hand tightened on Elena's back, a warning. She stayed silent, watching the dance of power play out. Test that theory if you want, Luca said quietly. But understand that if you do, what comes back won't be a meeting. It'll be war. And in war, Romano, I don't have to be civilized. I don't have to negotiate. I just have to win. Big words from someone who's outnumbered. You think I came here alone? You think I don't have people positioned around this building, ready to move if I give the signal? Luca's smile was cold. You wanted to make this about power, fine. But don't mistake my attempt at peace for weakness. The tension in the room ratcheted up. Elena could feel it. The men in the shadows shifting, hands moving toward weapons. This was the edge, the moment where conversation could tip into violence. Stop, Elena said. Both men turned to her, surprised. Elena, Luca started. No, both of you, just stop. She stepped forward, ignoring Luca's attempt to hold her back. Mr. Romano, you're right that I'm why Luca's here, that I'm the reason this got personal. So let me make something clear. I'm not a pawn. I'm not leverage. I chose to be with Luca knowing full well what his world looks like. And threatening me doesn't make him weak. It makes him someone willing to go to war for what matters to him. Is that really someone you want as an enemy? Romano stared at her, something like amusement crossing his face. Got yourself a Spitfire, Moretti. I'm not his. I'm my own person. And I'm choosing to stand here and tell you that whatever game you're playing, whatever point you're trying to make, leave me out of it. Fight over territory, over money, over power. But the second you threaten civilians to make a point, you lose the moral high ground you're pretending to stand on. Moral high ground, Romano laughed. Girl, there's no morality in this business. Just power and the willingness to use it. Then maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's why this entire system is built on fear and violence instead of actual respect. Elena felt Luca's hand on her arm, trying to pull her back, but she shook it off. You want to challenge Luca? Do it directly. But threatening me just proves you can't beat him on your own merits. The room went completely silent. Then Romano started laughing, really laughing, his whole body shaking with it. I'll be damned. She's right. And I'm a bastard for not seeing it sooner. He stood, extending his hand to Luca. You win this round, Moretti. The girl's off limits. We keep this professional. Luca didn't move. Just like that? Just like that. She's got more balls than half my men, and I respect that. Besides, Romano's smile turned sharp. I'm not interested in starting a war over pride. There's no profit in it. We'll sort out the territory disputes through proper channels, Lawyers, negotiations, the boring shit, but no more fires, no more threats. Deal? Deal. Luca shook his hand, his grip firm. But Romano, if you break this agreement, if anything happens to her, there won't be meetings or negotiations, just consequences. Understood. Now get out of here before I change my mind. Outside, Elena was shaking so hard she could barely walk. Luca practically carried her to the car, shoving her inside before climbing in himself. Drive, he ordered Marco. Now, they were 3 blocks away before Luca turned to Elena, his face a mixture of fury and awe. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking someone needed to say something real instead of all this posturing. You could have gotten us both killed if Romano had decided to take offense, but he didn't. He backed down because someone finally spoke to him like a human being instead of a threat to be managed. Luca stared at her, then started laughing, the kind of slightly hysterical laughter that comes after intense fear. You're insane. Completely insane, and you probably just saved both our lives. So you're not mad? I'm terrified and impressed, and so far beyond mad, I don't even know what I'm feeling. He pulled her into his arms. Don't ever do that again. I'm not making that promise. Elena, you wanted honesty. You wanted me to be part of your world. So that's what I'm doing. And sometimes that means not staying quiet when everyone expects me to. He kissed her hard, his hands tangling in her hair. I love you. And you're going to give me a heart attack before I'm 40. Probably. But you'll die interesting. Back at his apartment, the adrenaline finally crashed. Elena sat on the couch, her whole body trembling with delayed shock, while Luca poured them both drinks. That was stupid, she said. Incredibly stupid. But it worked. This time. Next time we might not be so lucky. He sat beside her, pulling her legs across his lap. But you were right. Romano respected you because you treated him like a person instead of an enemy. That's rare. In my world, everything is about power and fear. No one talks about actual human connection. Maybe that's what your world needs. Less fear, more honesty. That's not how it works. Why not? You're powerful enough to set new rules. What if instead of ruling through fear, you built something based on actual respect? You make it sound simple. I'm not saying it's simple. I'm saying it's possible. You already did it tonight. You tried to negotiate instead of defaulting to violence, and it worked. Luca was quiet for a long time, his fingers tracing patterns on her ankle. My whole life has been about survival. Building power so no one could hurt me again. But you make me want more than just survival. You make me want to actually live. So live, stop maintaining an empire and start building a life. And it's not that easy. I have obligations, people who depend on me, and you can still take care of them while also taking care of yourself. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Elena shifted to face him fully. What do you actually want, Luca? Not what you think you should want, not what your world expects. What do you want? He met her eyes, and she saw the vulnerability there, the fear of admitting something that might make him weak. You, he said quietly. I want mornings where we read the paper and argue about nothing. I want to watch you write and bring you terrible coffee. I want to fall asleep next to you and not worry about enemies or threats or maintaining power. I want normal, whatever version of that we can manage. Then let's start building that. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Elena, I can't just walk away from everything. I'm not asking you to walk away. I'm asking you to shift priorities, to start delegating more, trusting your people, creating space for a life outside the empire. She took his hands. You told me you were tired, that you'd been tired for 15 years, so stop. Stop letting your entire identity be wrapped up in power and control. Be Luca, just Luca, and let that be enough. He pulled her close, his face buried in her neck, and she felt him shaking. I don't know how, he whispered. Then we'll figure it out together. Over the next few months, things slowly changed. Luca started delegating more responsibilities to his trusted people, started coming home at reasonable hours instead of working until midnight. He and Elena fell into a rhythm. Mornings at his place, evenings where she'd write while he handled business, weekends where they'd explore the city or just stay in and exist together. It wasn't perfect. There were still threats to manage, still fires to put out both literally and metaphorically. Luca still sometimes reverted to the cold, efficient businessman who made decisions without consulting her. Elena still struggled with the violence inherent in his world, with the knowledge that the man she loved had done things she couldn't fully accept. But they talked about it, fought about it, worked through it. Elena's novel finally came together, the honesty she'd been struggling to find pouring onto the page. She wrote about complicated people making difficult choices, about love that wasn't simple or clean, but was real. Her editor loved it, sent it to publishers, and 3 months after Elena had met Luca at that gala, she had a book deal. "I'm so proud of you," Luca said when she told him, spinning her around his apartment. "It's just a deal. The book still has to succeed." "It will. Because it is honest. Because you put yourself into it." He set her down, suddenly serious. "Can I read it? The whole thing? You want to read my romance novel? I want to read anything you write, especially if it's about us. It's not... Okay, parts of it are inspired by us, but it's fiction. I know, but I still want to read how you see us, how you see me." She gave him the manuscript, terrified of his reaction. He read it in 2 days, barely sleeping, and when he finally set it down, his eyes were red. "You wrote me better than I deserve," he said. "I wrote you honestly, flaws and all. The ending..." He stopped. "You didn't give them easy happiness." "No, I gave them real happiness, the kind that takes work and compromise and choosing each other every day despite the complications." "Is that what you want? With me?" "Yeah, I do." 6 months after they met, Luca proposed. Not with a grand gesture or public display, but on a random Tuesday morning while they were making breakfast. He burned the eggs again, swore in Italian, and then just asked, "Marry me." Elena almost dropped her coffee. "What?" "Marry me. Not because it's what people expect or because we're supposed to, but because I love you and I want to keep choosing you every day for the rest of my life." "Luca, I know I'm not easy. I know my world is complicated and dangerous, and sometimes I'm going to revert to being the person I was before you. But I also know that you make me better. You make me want to be better. And I don't want to do this life without you." Elena set down her coffee, her hands shaking. "I need you to understand something first. If I say yes, I'm not agreeing to be protected and sheltered. I'm agreeing to be your partner. That means you include me in decisions, you let me help carry the weight, you trust me to handle the truth. I know. And it means you keep working on delegating, on building a life outside the empire, because I'm not marrying a reputation or a business. I'm marrying you." "I understand. And you have to promise me something. Promise that you'll keep trying to be more than what your world made you. That you won't let the violence and fear consume everything good." He took her hands. "I promise. I'll keep trying. I'll fail sometimes, and you'll have to remind me, but I'll keep trying." "Then yes, I'll marry you." They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony with only the people who mattered, Sophie and Marco and a handful of others who'd proven their loyalty to both of them. No press, no society pages, just 2 people choosing each other. Elena's mother would have hated it, hated the danger, hated the complications, hated that her daughter had chosen such an uncertain path. But Elena thought she also would have understood, because her mother had taught her to be brave, to take chances, to not let fear make her decisions. A year into their marriage, Elena's book hit the bestseller list. She did interviews where reporters asked about her inspiration, and she always gave the same answer. It was about learning that love isn't about finding someone perfect, it's about finding someone willing to grow with you. Luca continued to shift his empire, bringing in managers to handle day-to-day operations, focusing more on legitimate businesses than the shadowy deals that had built his fortune. It wasn't a complete transformation. He was still feared, still powerful, still occasionally made decisions Elena didn't agree with. But he was trying, and that mattered. They fought sometimes, had spectacular arguments about control and trust, and the balance between protection and partnership. But they always came back to each other. Always chose honesty over silence, conversation over cold shoulders. 2 years after they met, Elena found out she was pregnant. She told Luca over breakfast, their new tradition, the one meal where they were both required to put away phones and just be present. He stared at her, the coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. "You're serious?" "I'm serious. We're going to have a baby." "Apparently." He set down the cup carefully, like his hands weren't quite working right. "I don't know how to be a father." My own father he wasn't someone I want to emulate. So be different. Be the father you needed, the kind who shows up and listens and doesn't measure worth in power or fear. What if I fail? What if I mess this up? Elena reached across the table, taking his hand. Then we'll figure it out, together, like we've figured out everything else. I'm terrified. Me too, but we're terrified together, which makes it a little less scary. Their daughter was born on a Tuesday in October, screaming her way into the world with dark hair and her father's eyes. Luca held her for the first time and cried, actually cried, standing by Elena's hospital bed with this tiny human in his arms. She's perfect, he whispered. She's wrinkly and angry, Elena said, exhausted and happy. But yeah, she's perfect. They named her Rose after Elena's mother. And watching Luca with his daughter, gentle and careful and completely devoted, Elena saw the man he'd always had the potential to be. The man underneath the reputation and the fear and the carefully constructed empire. He was still complicated, still sometimes made decisions that scared her, still operated in a world that had more shadows than light. But he was also present, showed up for midnight feedings and diaper changes, read to Rose in Italian and English, teaching her both languages from the start, slowly dismantled more of the dangerous pieces of his empire, choosing his daughter's safety over expansion. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were still threats to manage, still moments where Elena questioned if she'd made the right choice. But there were also mornings where they'd wake up to Rose babbling in her crib, evenings where they'd sit on the couch exhausted and content, years building on each other into something real. 5 years after they met, Elena published her third novel. Luca had extricated himself from most of the criminal elements of his business, focusing on real estate and hospitality ventures that didn't require looking over his shoulder. They'd moved into a house in Brookline with a yard for Rose and a home office where Elena could write. Sophie came over for dinner one evening, watching Luca chase Rose around the backyard while Elena cooked. "You were right," Sophie said. "About what?" "About this being worth the risk. I hated it at first, thought you were being reckless. But watching you now, you're happy. Actually happy." "I am. It's not perfect, and sometimes I still worry about his past catching up, but..." Elena watched through the window as Luca caught Rose, lifting her high enough to make her shriek with laughter. "He's a good man trying to be better. That's all any of us can do." "You changed him." "No, I gave him a reason to change himself. There's a difference." That night, after Rose was asleep and Sophie had gone home, Elena and Luca sat on their back porch with wine and the quiet satisfaction of a day well lived. "Tell me something," Luca said. "If you could go back to that night at the gala, knowing everything that would happen, would you still take my hand?" Elena thought about the fear and the danger, about the night she'd lain awake wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. But she also thought about mornings in his apartment, about the way he'd shown her his worst self and let her decide, about Rose sleeping upstairs with both their features mixed in her face. "Every time," she said. "I'd take your hand every single time, even with all the complications, the danger, especially with the complications, because the alternative was safe and small and lonely, and this," she gestured at the house, at the life they'd built. "This is messy and scary and real, and I wouldn't trade it for anything." He pulled her close, his chin resting on her head. "I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. You saved me, Elena, from becoming something I didn't want to be. We saved each other. I was drowning in my safe little life, and you reminded me what it felt like to actually live." They sat like that for a long time, watching stars appear overhead. And Elena thought about journeys and destinations, about how sometimes the scariest choices lead to the best outcomes, about how love wasn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone willing to grow. Her mother would have understood that, would have seen that Elena hadn't given up on her dreams. She'd just expanded them to include more than she'd originally imagined. 10 years after that night at the gala, Elena published a memoir about falling in love with someone from a completely different world. She wrote honestly about the fear and the violence, about the night she'd questioned her choices, and the morning she'd woken up certain she'd made the right ones. About what it meant to love someone complicated, to build something real in the space between who you are and who you want to be. The book sold well, generated controversy and conversation. Some people praised her honesty. Others accused her of romanticizing danger. Elena didn't care much about either reaction. She'd written her truth, and whether people understood it or not wasn't her responsibility. Luca read it 3 times, his annotations in the margins getting more emotional with each pass. On the final page, he wrote, "Thank you for seeing me, all of me, and loving me anyway." Their life wasn't a fairy tale. Luca still had bad days where the weight of his past pressed down too hard. Elena still sometimes resented the complications his world brought into theirs. Rose grew up knowing her father's history, knowing the truth about where he'd come from and what he'd done. But they were honest about it. Didn't pretend the past didn't exist or that everything was simple. And Rose learned early that people are complicated, that love means choosing someone despite their flaws, that strength comes from vulnerability. On their 15th anniversary, Elena and Luca returned to the restaurant where they'd had their first dinner. It was still there, still cozy and chaotic, still serving carbonara that tasted like home. "We made it," Luca said, raising his glass. "We did. Despite everything, we made it." Was it worth it? Honestly? Elena thought about the question, really thought about it. About the sacrifices and the fears and the moments she'd almost walked away, but also about the growth and the love and the life they'd built together. Yeah, it was worth it. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. We chose each other with our eyes open, knowing it would be hard. And we kept choosing each other. That's what matters. To honesty, Luca said, and to love that's complicated enough to be real. They clinked glasses, and Elena felt the weight of 15 years settle comfortably around her shoulders. Not as a burden, but as evidence of something earned, something fought for, and maintained through constant effort and choosing. Because that was the secret no one told you about love. It wasn't about finding someone who made everything easy. It was about finding someone who made the hard parts worth it. Someone who saw your worst and chose to stay. Someone who grew with you instead of staying static. Luca Moretti had been dangerous and complicated, and probably a mistake by any rational measure. But he'd also been honest and vulnerable and willing to change. And Elena had been brave enough to give him that chance. They'd both been imperfect people making imperfect choices. But together, they'd built something that worked. Something real. Something that proved love wasn't about perfection. It was about commitment to growth, to honesty, to choosing each other even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And that, Elena thought as she watched her husband smile at her across the table, was worth every risk she'd ever taken. The story of Elena Ward and Luca Moretti wasn't a fairy tale with a perfect ending. It was something better. It was real. Messy and complicated and beautiful in its imperfection. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose to see someone's humanity despite their past, to believe in their capacity for change, to build something meaningful in the space between who they were and who they're becoming. They'd both been strangers in a world that didn't quite fit them. But together, they'd created their own world, one built on honesty and trust and the daily choice to keep showing up for each other. And in the end, that was all anyone could really ask for.